Grauman's Chinese Theater, night. Rita and Dutch sweep up to the entrance of the theater. This is a premiere, and there are a number of excitable spectators flanking the entrance walk. Rita beams at them, waves husband's arm. He is a tall, somber, well-built, light-haired man of 38. He smiles at his wife's childlike excitement. Inside Grauman's Chinese Theater. Rita and Dutch seated off the aisle. A small, bespectacled man is bent over them. Close-up of Rita being interviewed by the small, bespectacled man. Rita. I've never been so happy in all my life. We had a wonderful time in Acapulco on our honeymoon. I am absolutely, deliriously happy. Interviewer. Do you believe marriage will interfere with your career? Rita. Dutch and I think we are two intelligent people, and we see no reason why I can't have a career and be a wife too. She darts a quick, nervous glance at her husband at her side. He is listening silently to a man at his side. Rita turns back to the interviewer with a patient, waiting smile. Beverly Hills Hotel, day. Establishing shot of the hotel entrance. Considerable activity, cars pulling in and out, people waiting to be picked up. Beverly Hills Hotel lobby. Medium long shot showing the crowded lobby. Close shot of switchboard with crowded lobby in background. Switchboard operator. Mr. Seymour isn't taking any calls yet. Beverly Hills Hotel suite. Medium long shot noting Rita and Dutch asleep on their respective twin beds. The Venetian blinds are drawn tightly and the room seems dark and close. The sun, as we have seen in previous shots, is very strong today, and the close air of the bedroom seems muggy. Rita sleeps with only a sheet covering her. Dutch has a light blanket over him, one bare hairy arm visible over it. One of the bedspreads has been piled loosely on a soft chair. The other lies in a heap on the floor at the foot of the bed. Clothes seem to have been left at random here and there. A shirt, Rita's stockings, Dutch's shoes, a woman's white silk blouse. The total effect is one of heat and disorder and discomfort. Close shot of Rita waking up with Dutch sleeping in the background. She wakes up conscious of the closeness of the air, her eyes red, not fully rested. She lies quietly for a moment, conscious of an unpleasant taste in her mouth and a sad, amorphous weight in her stomach. She sits up after a moment and lets her legs dangle over the side of her bed. She faces her husband's bed and watches him without betraying any emotion for a moment. She wears limp blue pajamas, clinging in small patches to her wet skin. She picks up the house phone, waits a moment. Rita, low murmur into phone. What time is it? As late as that? Think I can still get some breakfast out of room service? No, I'll call later. She hangs up and stands, stiff and yet not aching, with more of a feeling of desolation rather than physical discomfort. She creeps on her bare feet across the green carpeting to the window, opens one blind, reaches out and opens the window. This effort exhausts her, and she stands limply, catching her breath. A sudden sunlight streaming in through the one blind bleaches her face. Rita looks out over the palmetto and yucca trees to the busy, chattering activity at the car entrance to the hotel. Her face reveals a sad distaste for herself, the cluttered hotel room, the busy, bright sunlight. Behind her, her husband's voice reaches into the murky, slow movement of her thoughts. Dutch, muttering. What time is it? She turns. Reverse shot across her shoulder. Her husband lies silently on the bed. He has thrown back his covers, revealing a strong, brown, hirsute chest. He, too, seems drained. Rita. 1:30. Dutch. Boy, it's hot. She moves silently back to her bed, sits down facing her husband, looks down at a copy of Look magazine on the floor by her bare feet. Rita, I feel blue. I hate waking up with half the day gone already. Dutch, we gotta get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Rita, what do we do 8 o'clock in the morning? Dutch, I don't know. Go to the beach. Rita, I'm sick of going to the beach. Rubs her temples. A dense, close silence fills the room. You know how I feel? When I first came out here, I didn't know anybody. I used to stay up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning reading magazines. I wrote a letter to my father-in-law, care of the studio, but he never answered me. I used to sleep till 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day. I used to wake up sick in my heart. It's funny. I haven't thought about that in years. I hate waking up this late. I feel real blue. I really do. She lies back on her bed, stares up at the ceiling. You ever feel that way, Dutch? Dutch. Sure. Rita. You know what I used to do when I first came out here? I used to go into bars and think they could pick me up. Just to talk to somebody. I never drank in those days. I just used to sit with these guys till they got drunk, and then I'd go home and read. Sometimes I'd fall asleep sitting up reading. I had a little room with an old Greek couple on South Orange Drive. I was so lonely, I used to have the shakes like I had Parkinson's disease. But I never went home with any of those men. I just couldn't stand the thought of somebody touching me. I came close to going crazy in those days. Dutch, likewise lying on his bed, staring up at the ceiling. You know, before we got married, I started to go to pieces myself. I used to take awful good care of myself. Every morning, a shower and a shave. I couldn't stand it if my shoes weren't shiny. My people are St. Louis German, you know. We're awful clean. But the last half year or so, I began going to pieces. Sometimes I wouldn't leave my hotel room for 2 days. I wouldn't shave. I used to look at the toothpaste. I couldn't stand the idea of the taste. Rita, why is that, Dutch? Dutch, well, you know, doing nothing all day, it eats up a man. That's no life. I don't know what I want to do, but I want to do something. Get into some business. You can be a retired sports star just so long. What do you think I ought to do? Rita, I don't know. I'd like to get out of Hollywood, though. Dutch gets up on one elbow. Dutch, would you really? Rita, I'm not getting anywheres here, Dutch. I mean, why kid myself? He examines her as she lies on her bed, a troubled blonde girl in rumpled blue pajamas, her eyes closed now against the warmth of the room. After a moment, he lies back, staring at the ceiling. Dutch, would you like to go back to St. Louis with me? She turns her head on her pillow so that she can see him. Rita, what would we do there, Dutch? Dutch, afraid to look at her, he stares at the ceiling. Well, my father died. My brother's running the contracting business. They're doing very nicely. He's always writing me, my brother, to come back, get in the business. As a kid, I always liked hanging around my father. The cement and the mortar and the big trucks full of steel rods. I'd like to go back, I think. Get into the business. I'm pretty important in St. Louis. People like me there. We'll get a nice house, have people to dinner. My mother's kind of nosy, but if she gives you any trouble, just tell me. I'll straighten her out. You met my brother at the wedding. He liked you very much. I think that would be nice. It's real, instead of floating around in midair like we are now. He looks over to his wife and is a little startled to see that her eyes are filled with tears. He sits up, moves over to her bed, looks down at her with concerned tenderness. Dutch. It'll be nice, Rita. You'll like it. She is suddenly in his arms, clutching at him, pressing her tear-streaked face against his chest. Rita. Oh, Dutch. Do you love me? Dutch. Sure. Rita. Do you love me, Dutch? Dutch holds her. I love you, Rita. Rita. Let's do that, Dutch. Let's go to St. Louis. I got kin in St. Louis. I never met them. He is holding her tightly, kissing her neck, her shoulders. She holds on to him, almost desperately, asking over and over again, Do you love me, Dutch? Do you love me? Do you love me, Dutch? Dissolved to Dutch and Rita's suite. Dusk. Rita lies in bed. The room is still in a state of disorder. It is at dusk. A small breeze gently wafts the draperies. The windows are opened. Rita lies in bed, her bare shoulders and arms over the light blanket. A glass ashtray balances precariously on her stomach. She smokes a cigarette. She watches her husband as he moves across the room, a strong little man, a strong lithe man in pajama trousers. He goes into the bathroom, comes out again. She watches his every move with a growing sense of apprehension. He looks into his chest of drawers for underwear and socks. He is also smoking a cigarette. Rita, abruptly. What do you mean you love me, Dutch? He looks at her briefly. Rita. What did I ever do for you? You know hundreds of girls. Why me? I'm not especially pretty. Why should anybody love me? I don't think very much of myself. If I was a man, I couldn't love me. In many ways, I'm a terrible girl. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I just gave her away to my first husband without even arguing. He sent me a paper in the mail, and I signed her entire custody away without even reading what the paper said. I never went to New York to visit her. I keep her out of my mind. I'm so ashamed of myself. I think I'm ugly. I'm dirty. I don't understand why you love me. I don't believe you. I don't think you love me. I think you're physically attracted to me. I don't even know why that. Why'd you marry me, Dutch? I came over any time you called me anyhow. Dutch, moving back across the room to the bathroom, carrying shorts and socks, amiably. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes into the bathroom. Rita regards the open doorway. Rita. What's it like when you love somebody, Dutch? Dutch, off-screen in bathroom. Ain't you ever loved anybody? Rita. Nobody ever loved me before. Why should you love me? Dutch appears in the bathroom doorway. He is wearing a silk polka-dotted robe. His bare legs protrude below it. Dutch. You always try to act so tough, but you're like a little kid. That's the truth. I always liked little kids. My brother's kids, I'm crazy about them. I'm gonna take a shower. We'll have dinner downstairs, then we're supposed to go to Burt Lancaster's. He disappears back into the bathroom. Rita leans on one elbow, holding the sheet against her, regards the door to the bathroom. Rita. I don't know what love is, Dutch. I find you very physically attractive. And I guess you find me very physically attractive. But That ain't gonna last very long, Dutch. The rush of shower interrupts her. She calls out, Rita. Dutch? He obviously doesn't hear her. She sinks back onto the bed, her pretty little face twisted into a thoughtful, anxious frown. She reaches around for the ashtray now at her side, drops a long ash into it. Beverly Hills Hotel Polo Lounge evening. Rita and Dutch are at dinner, with the restaurant in the background. Their dinner is about over. They are on their coffee and dessert. A tall man in a sports jacket is bending over Dutch, talking inaudibly to him. Dutch is listening with a thin smile. Rita sits, her feeling of apprehension deepening to the point of being obviously disturbed. Behind them, the dinner hour is in full progress, jangle and jammer. Dutch notes his wife's distracted mood. Dutch. Something wrong, honey? She smiles nervously, shakes her head, but the dark mood promptly returns to her face. The man talking to Dutch goes. Dutch looks at his wife again, purses his lips, wonders what's up. Rita, suddenly. Let's go upstairs again, Dutch. Dutch. Don't you want to go to Lancaster's? Rita, standing and starting away. Let's go upstairs. Dutch and Rita sweet. Rita is in tears, in panic. Dutch listens to her with the patient fondness of a father. Through the window we can see it is night outside. The lamps in the rooms are lit. Rita, in tears. I don't want to go to St. Louis, Dutch. Dutch, consolingly. All right, honey, we won't go. Rita, you'll get tired of me. Dutch, what are you talking about? He moves to her, tries to hold her, but she moves away from him in panic. Rita, you'll leave me. You'll desert me. What would you want with me? I'm just a little tramp. You like me now, but you'll get tired. You'll be sorry you brought me. You'll be ashamed of me. Your family ain't gonna like me. Dutch. Honey. Rita, crying out. Why should they like me? I'm a nothing. Give me a little more chance at my career, Dutch. If I was a star, then everybody would like me. Then I would go to St. Louis with you, and you'd see. All your friends would like me. See, then you could be proud of me. I know you'll leave me, Dutch. I know you will. Dutch, holding her now. You're like a little baby. Rita, weeping on his chest. I'm sorry, Dutch. I'm sorry. Dutch, with deep parental calm and affection. Take it easy now. Take it easy. Rita, I'm no good. I'm no good. He holds her, rocking a little back and forth, patting her gently, very much as if he were calming a frightened baby. Westwood Movie Theater night. Long shot, looking toward the entrance of the theater. In the foreground stands a Santa Claus in shirt sleeves and red trousers ringing a bell. This and the fact that people on the sidewalks wear light topcoats is the only indication that it is winter. Some people come out of the theater. 2 of them are Rita and Dutch. Camera pans with them as they come toward us and past us, long enough for us to see that much of the warmth of their earlier relationship has drained away over the months. They walk silently, not particularly interested in each other, toward a Cadillac convertible parked down the street a bit. She opens the door on her side and gets in. He walks around to his side and gets in. Inside car night. Process shot. As they drive along darkened Sunset Boulevard back to their hotel. The dark landscape gliding along behind them. Occasional cars on the highway. They sit silently, unrelated. Rita is looking vaguely at the passing landscape. Dutch stares at the road ahead. Beverly Hills Hotel lobby. Rita and Dutch come into the lobby. It is deserted. It is quite late at night. Dutch pauses at the desk for messages. There are none. Rita waits in the middle of the lobby for him to rejoin her. He goes to her and they start wordlessly off for the elevators. Dutch and Rita's hotel suite night. The door opens. A shadow of hall light shoots into the black room. Rita and Dutch are two black, bulky silhouettes in the doorway for a moment. Then Dutch turns the entrance light on. He moves farther into the room, turning on the room light and pocketing the key as he goes. Rita closes the door and comes slowly into the room after him. Dutch removes his coat, hangs it up in the closet, yawns, rubs the back of his neck. Rita goes to the window, closes the Venetian blinds. Dutch sits down on a soft chair, removes his shoes. Rita lets her cloth stole drop onto another chair, goes off to the bathroom, turns on the light, closes the door. Dutch takes off his black silk socks now. He tucks them into his shoes, bends, picks the shoes up, stands, carries them to the side of the room, puts them down. Camera pans with him. He wriggles his arms free of his jacket, which he drops on a chair, and then slides out of his suspender straps. Bathroom of Dutch and Rita's suite. Rita enters the bathroom, surrounded by gleaming white tile. She is slipping out of her dress. She hangs it on a hook on the door. She is wearing a corset-like undergarment with a starched underslip. She opens the door and calls dully out to her husband. Rita, you want to give me my robe? She leaves the door slightly ajar, sits down on the edge of the tub, begins ungartering her stockings. A moment later, the bathroom door opens and her husband appears, proffering a pink lace peignoir. She takes it from him without rising and lets it fall loosely over the edge of the tub, so that the sleeves and collar form a soft puddle on the bottom of the tub. She goes back to ungartering her stockings, looks up, notes her husband, now in undershirt and trousers, standing looking at her. She looks down at her other stocking and starts to ungarter that. After a moment, she reaches over with one foot and closes the bathroom door in her husband's face. She strips off her second stocking and stands, leaving the two stockings in wispy heaps on the bathroom floor. She stands in front of the full-length mirror regarding herself with no evident expression. She reaches behind herself and begins to unhook the corset-like undergarment. Bedroom. Dutch, in pajama bottoms, moves back to the small entrance hallway to turn off the light there. His suit lies carelessly draped over the back of a soft chair. After he turns off the entrance light, he moves around the room, turning off the lamps, leaving only a reading lamp by the soft chair on which Rita's stole lies. He finds a copy of Life on the bed table between the twin beds, carries it to the soft chair, moves the stole aside, sits and begins thumbing through the magazine. He is a strong, lithe, muscular man, his chest thick with blonde hair, somberly looking at the pictures in Life. After a moment, the bathroom door opens and Rita appears, carrying her dress, which she throws over Dutch's suit on the soft chair. She is wearing the pink peignoir. She puts a handful of jewelry, a choker, and a bracelet on the chest of drawers, sits down on one of the twin beds, and examines her fingernails. Dutch rises, comes over to her, sits down beside her, begins kissing her neck. Rita, examining her nails. Aren't you going to brush your teeth or wash up or anything? Dutch rises a little sullenly and goes into the bathroom, leaving the door ajar. Camera stays on Rita. She lies back on the bed now and stares up at the ceiling. Behind her, off-screen, we hear the sound of rushing water, then off. And Dutch comes out of the bathroom, stands looking down at her. She closes her eyes. He lies down on the bed beside her, reaches over and grips her limp body, and kisses her on the mouth. His face is emotionless, even cold. His head moves to kiss her neck, and we see Rita's face close up over his shoulder. She is staring at the ceiling. Then her eyes close again, and she prepares to suffer through the experience. Dissolve to the hotel room night. Dutch sleeps on his twin bed. The room is dark now except for the lights of the patio and the moonlight, which brings a vague white light into the room, drawing a thin white outline for the furniture pieces. Camera pans slowly across the room, noting that the other bed has been occupied but is not now, and eventually finding Rita sitting in the soft chair by the now slightly opened Venetian blinds. She is wearing her peignoir and smoking a cigarette, sipping a highball. The bottle of liquor is on the chest of drawers at her elbow. She is a little drunk. She is staring bleakly down at the carpeting. Hotel suite sometime later. Dissolved to their hotel suite. Dutch stands in his pajama trousers, unshaven for 2 days, hair unkempt. He has obviously just awakened, and not from a particularly good sleep. His eyes are slitted with cold fury, and he is brandishing a magazine. Dutch, you have to pose for these kind of pictures. He flings the magazine in the direction of the bathroom floor. It flaps against the wall and slithers to the floor. Rita is standing in the bathroom doorway. She wears an overly chic cocktail dress, which is still unzipped under her armpits and hangs loosely about her. She has not put on her shoes yet and stands in her stockinged feet. She is fixing her hair, which is loose. There is a slatternly feeling about her. She is in a black rage herself. Rita, I didn't know he was going to sell them to that magazine. He told me the pictures were for Esquire. He turns away, his anger thick within him, an inarticulate, unexplored anger really against himself, but no less intense for that. He sits down, stares at his toes, absently rubs his unshaven cheeks. Rita has gone back into the bathroom. We can see her from the back, standing in front of the wall mirror over the basin, angrily bobby-pinning her hair. She turns now, comes back to the open doorway, surveys her husband with sullen distaste. Rita, you coming with me or not? Dutch, where? Rita, you know where. Dutch, I never know where you go anymore. Rita, Lester Brackman is giving a party because they finished shooting the picture this morning. Lester Brackman says my bit was the standing bit of the whole picture. He told me R.M. Lucas, vice president in charge of production, saw the rushes, says I'm going to steal the whole picture. They're having a party on the set. You coming? Dutch says nothing, sits heavily in swollen, dull anger. Rita waits for an answer. Then, still fixing her hair, she moves across the room, a little squatly in her stocking feet. She opens a closet door. Rita, I don't like this dress. I'm going to change it. Draw the blinds, Dutch. Dutch, what for? All anybody has to do is buy that magazine. She turns and regards her husband with cold dislike. Rita, I never cheated on you once, Dutch, in the 11 months we've been married. Not even for business. I could have had a contract with Lester Brackman 100 times. All I had to do was say a word. But I told him, Mr. Brackman, I'm a married woman. I don't do that kind of thing anymore. I never cheated on you once. That's more than you can say. The point is a telling one. He looks away. Rita, just don't cheat with girls I know, Dutch, because it gets back to me. She zips her dress with angry, sharp movements of her hands, finds a pair of shoes lying on the carpeting by the closet door, straightens them with her toe, slides her feet into them. Rita, why don't you shave? You haven't been out of this room in 2 days. You better get a hold of yourself. You sleep till 1, 2 o'clock every day now. She crosses coldly back to the bathroom, stands in front of the bathroom mirror, examining herself. The basin below the mirror is covered with endless jars of cosmetics and lipstick tubes. In the living room, Dutch sits holding in his own anger. Dutch, eyes down, muttering. Maybe if I had a wife who was a wife, looks up as Rita starts back into the room. You don't care about me. You never cared about me. His voice has begun to rise. Rita, her own voice suddenly shrill. Anytime you wanted me, I submitted to you. They are suddenly shouting at each other, drowning out each other's words. Dutch, oh, shut up. Rita, why don't you leave me alone? Dutch, shut up, shut up, shut up. Rita, you sit there watching television all night long. Dutch, you married me to get your name in the papers. Rita, why'd you marry me? Dutch, two-bit tramp. Rita, I never understood that. Just tell me. Dutch, I have to send my own clothes to the cleaners. Rita, just tell me that. Dutch, crying out. What? What? What do you want? Rita, staring out the window. All right, quiet. Everybody will hear you. He stands and moves quickly away because he is horrified to find that he is about to cry. Dutch, because I thought you was a nice girl. I thought you liked me. He sits down on the bed. A cold, unresolved silence fills the room. A silence thick with hatred and unspoken violence. Dutch, I'd like to get out of this town. I don't know what keeps me here. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Rita stands much more deeply disturbed by their sudden flurry of hatred than she herself knows. She hopes he will continue talking, but he just sits, a somehow disheveled and beaten man, frightened even to look at the intense, flinty woman he has married. After a moment, she speaks. Rita, hoping he will agree. You coming or not? I'll wait for you if you want to get dressed. He says nothing, stares at the floor. She stands, her entire body taut with the feeling of her trapped marriage, aching to leave with some feeling of resolution but completely unequipped to deal with the matter. After a moment, she turns and takes 2 steps toward the door, then stops. Rita, I'm going. Okay? He says nothing. She turns warily and goes out the door. Dutch stands promptly upon the closing click of the door, walks a few aimless paces around the room. He turns and meanders barefoot to the telephone table between the beds, perches on the welter of bed sheets and blankets on one bed, lifts the phone. Dutch, into phone. You got any messages for me? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, will you get Mr. Kleiner on the phone for me? Or will you get Mr. Kleiner for me, please? Thanks. Sports desk, please. Hello, Allie, this is Dutch. I got a message you called me. No, I just woke up. No, I don't want to go. I feel lousy. I don't know. I just feel like sitting around the room. She went to a party down at the studio. They just finished her picture. What do I want to go to fights for? Who else is going? They'll just keep asking me who's better, Kanzaneri or Barney Russ. Listen, why don't you bring him over here and we'll watch it on TV or something? Hotel suite living room night. Dutch, Seymour, and 3 other men in the living room of Dutch and Rita's hotel suite. The first man is 50-odd, the second 40-odd. They are both unmistakably of pugilistic background, a little given to weight. The third man is a reasonably intelligent-looking fellow, a newspaper man. They are involved in one of those endless familiar bowl sessions that ex-boxers fall into. They are all vaguely bored, but this is all they have to talk about. They've heard the stories 100 times, but they still summon enough energy to laugh. Dutch is removed from it all, detached from the talk, bored by the baseball game showing on the television set, deep within his own pained thoughts. Second man. You guys remember Baldy Hoffman? First man. Baldy Hoffman? Hey, Dutch, I ever tell you... Dutch, hey, Dutch, about the time... Dutch. Baldy Hoffman was fighting Oscar the Turk. Hey, Dutch, he was no more a Turk than you or me. Dutch. Hey, Dutch, he was an Irishman from Fall River, Mass. Second man. You guys remember Baldy Hoffman with those big feet of his? First man. Used to fight in 1921, 1922, around that time. He had hair all over him. He looked like a gorilla. Second man. Hey, Rocky, you mind if I tell a story? First man. What? Second man. I can't get a word in edgewise with this guy here. First man. Hey, Dutch. Dutch turns a dutiful interest to the persistent sound of his name. First man. I ever tell you, Dutch, about the time Baldy Hoffman, he got the biggest feet in Boston, you know? I ever tell you guys, hey, Dutch, I ever tell you guys about the time Baldy Hoffman, he can't find his fighting shoes? The other 2 men have begun to laugh. The second man, who has heard this story endless times already, begins rocking back and forth in his seat, shaking with silent merriment. First man. Well, he can't borrow a pair. Man, there's nobody in Boston got a pair of shoes Baldy can wear. So he has to fight barefooted. By the 3rd round, he got so many blisters from the canvas, Dutch. Hey, Dutch, he got to cool off his feet in a pail of water, Dutch. Hey, Dutch. Everybody but Dutch is absolutely choking with laughter now. First man. Roaring with laughter himself. Hey, Dutch, that Baldy, he got such a big feet, he can't get him in the pail. Dutch works up a thin smile for the story. First man. He can hardly get the words out. He is laughing so much. He says, hey, I can't get my feet in a pail. Screams of laughter. He finally gets one of his feet in. He can't get the foot out. This is too much for the second man. He gets up and walks around in little circles, clutching his aching sides. Dutch abruptly stands. Dutch. I don't feel so hot. You guys stay here. He turns sharply and exits. The laughter drains out of the others. The newspaper man looks worried seeing Dutch departing that way. The studio sound stage. A wrap party is going on. An improvised buffet has been set up on 2 carpenters' horses, and about 30 people stand loosely around in the huge, sprawling area, holding drinks and paper plates covered with cold cuts, occasionally laughing. Most of the party are crew members and are in their shirt sleeves and work clothes. There are about 8 or 9 women, a few men in jackets and neckties. It is not a particularly gay affair. Dutch picks his way past the flat and joins the large opened area where the party is quietly going on. He stands on the fringe watching the party. Dutch's POV. The dulcitory party. At the far end of the long shot, we see Rita gaily chatting with 2 men wearing jackets and ties. She holds a drink. She has noted Dutch's entrance. She is one of those girls who always have one eye on the entrance to see who's coming. When she thinks she has caught Dutch's eye, she smiles and waves a little. He does not respond. Instead, he turns away and moves a few paces to an impeccably dressed man in his late 40s, with an intelligent but determinedly sardonic face. The man is talking to another man in shirt sleeves. He watches Dutch approach with a smile. Dutch. Hello, Lester. How are you? Brackman. Hello, Dutch. Want a drink? Dutch shakes his head. Lester returns his attention to the man he is talking to. Brackman. Well, I don't know, Joe. I think you'll be free by the end of the week. It looks pretty good to me. Maybe 1-2 days of retakes. We'll know that by Wednesday. Dutch. Lester. Brackman bends to hear Dutch's quiet, tense words. Lester, my wife got any talent at all? Brackman. Well, she's got something, Dutch. She's very good in this picture. She's going to attract a lot of attention. She's got what I call the quality of availability. She's not particularly pretty. It's a kind of warmth that some women have that makes all the men in the audience think they could make her if only they knew her. She don't act. She's no Olivia de Havilland. But there's a lot of big stars in this town who ain't Olivia de Havilland. If you're asking me as a producer whether I think she's going to get somewheres, I'd say yeah. I'd like to sign her. You know, we've been getting about 500 or 600 letters a week on this girl on her last picture. And the fan magazines are picking her up. There's apparently something about your wife, Dutch. R.M. Lucas saw her dailies. He's very excited about her. He wants to sign her. Do a lot of publicity, a whole campaign. Dutch, without looking at the man. Lester, I understand you're trying to make my wife. I'll bust your head open if I hear that again. He turns and moves slowly off, picking his way past the flat he passed coming in. Lester Brackman stands pursing his lips. A movie. Dark. Dutch sitting in the darkened movie theater. The diffuse gray light emanating from the screen far up ahead makes changing shadows on his face. He is watching the picture with no response. Then his attention wanders downward and he stares at the back of the seat in front of him. Santa Monica Boulevard night. We see the deserted boulevard at 1 o'clock in the morning. An occasional car shoots by. Otherwise, the dusky little shop fronts are empty and dark and bare. We see Dutch walking slowly, almost purposefully, down the street. Almost purposelessly down the street. Camera waits for him to pass it. He gets near enough for us to see he carries a dull weight of pain inside him, and the ever-controlled muscles of his face are released enough to show this. Beverly Hills Hotel lobby. Dutch slowly crosses the deserted lobby on his way to the elevators. Dutch and Rita's suite. Dutch's bulky silhouette blocks the light issuing from the hallway. The room itself is dark. With a sudden rush, Rita is upon him, flinging her arms around his neck and pressing herself to him. Rita and Dutch clutch each other in the opened doorway of their suite. The sudden, unexpected explosion of love from his wife has ripped the last of Dutch's reserve away. He stares over his wife's head, tears rolling slowly out of wide-opened eyes. He presses his wife to him slowly, his cheek against the softness of her hair. Their words come in mumbles and whispers with great effort. Dutch. I want to go back to St. Louis, Rita. I want to go back to St. Louis. Rita. I love you, Dutch. I love you. I love you. Dutch. Please come with me. Please. Rita, anything you say, Dutch. Dutch. Holy Jesus, Mary Mother of Christ. They hold each other in a desperate embrace. Dissolve 2. The hotel suite, dawn. Rita and Dutch sleep in their respective beds. It is dawn now, and the room is alight but gray. Dutch's robe lies on the floor in front of his bed. One of the bed pillows is on the soft chair. The bedspreads have been piled loosely on other chairs. Dutch sleeps peacefully on his side. Rita sleeps rigidly, her face almost stiff with control. Her sheets are twisted, and one of the blankets is half off the bed. Suddenly, she sits bolt upright, her eyes wide, staring. For a moment, she just sits this way. Then she gets her feet over the side and sits holding her face in her hands and shaking her head as if to clear it of its suddenly turbulent thoughts. She gets up. She is wearing pajamas now, and she steps barefoot to the window and looks out on the dawning day. Then she turns and looks at her husband, a blanketed hump, one hairy bare arm over the covers, his face pressed deep in the pillows. She stares at him for a long moment, then sits down on a soft chair on top of a piled bedspread. She seems exhausted. Her shoulders slump wearily and her hands fall slackly between her knees. She stares abjectly at the floor. The hotel suite, morning. Medium shot, looking across Rita's shoulders, sitting as she was in the last shot toward Dutch's bed. He is just waking up. He shifts under his covers and eventually opens his eyes. After a moment, he sits up, dressed only in pajama bottoms. The sun is bright in the room. He looks quickly over to Rita sitting in the chair and knows instantly that whatever moment they had the night before has gone. He looks back at the floor, assembling himself, a chill gathering in his stomach. Rita sits in the chair, void of reaction. Dutch stands. He hobbles around the bed past Rita and plods off to the bathroom. He tries a quick look at his wife again, and then goes into the bathroom. He closes the door. Rita gets to her feet with some effort. Her mind is going lickety-split. Her face is one condensed mass of concentration as she assembles her words, arguments, points of discussion. She moves to the closed bathroom door, takes another moment to think before she speaks. Rita, to the bathroom door. Dutch, let's stay here just another couple of weeks. What's another couple of weeks? Lester Brackman wants me to come over to his office this morning. I'm entitled to my chance. We could live in St. Louis. I would make a 2-picture deal and just fly out here to make the pictures. But we could live in St. Louis. The sound of rushing water in the bathroom interrupts her. She turns a little, exasperated, sits on her bed by the bathroom door, waits till the sound of water stops. Rita, suddenly crying out, Dutch, I can't live in St. Louis and just be a nothing. I can't. You'll be tired of me in 3 months. You'll be sorry you brought me. I ain't no housewife. I wouldn't know what to do in a kitchen. I'll go crazy there doing nothing all day long. I'm sorry, Dutch. I swear I'm sorry. I don't know why you put up with me at all. Only silence greets her from behind the bathroom door. She waits a moment, then turns and begins to pace restlessly around. She starts to say something. She becomes aware of muffled sounds behind the door. After a moment, she realizes that her husband is crying, and the sounds are deep, shuddering sobs. She wheels away from the door, clutching her hands, her face screwed into the most intense expression of pain. She stands, her eyes squeezed tight, every feature twisted into an agony she couldn't explain herself. Behind her, her husband's sobs come clearly through the door. Major studio lot day. High-angle shot looking down on the deserted studio street. The street is absolutely empty except for Rita striding briskly across the street from the blazingly bright side into the deep shadow cast by one of the executive buildings. She is overdressed just a little, as usual, everything a little too. She is the same brassy little starlet we met at the beginning of this part of the story. Brackman's reception room. Wide shot showing Rita sitting composed and stiff on a wooden chair, and a bespectacled secretary busy tapping away at her desk. It is the same sort of reception room that Bert Hare's had, except there is more of everything, including space and awards and picture posters hanging on the wall. Rita is the only one waiting. The intercom buzzes on the secretary's desk. She picks up one of the 3 phones on her desk, nods, looks at Rita. Secretary. You can go in, Miss Shawn. The secretary puts the receiver back on the hook, returns to her typing. Rita rises and crosses to the door leading to the inner office. Brackman's office. Rita enters, closing the door behind her. The office is a corner one, obviously a prominent producer's office. It is done in the most impeccable taste. It is unbearably well furnished. Lester Brackman stands at a window. There is a man in his late 60s, portly, bland, pince-nez, wearing a baggy blue suit with a vest, standing at the other window. An extremely large desk, covered with all the evidence of a busy producer carefully arranged all over it, dominates the center of the room. Rita, smiling at Lester. Hello, Lester. The 2 men smile at her. Brackman, detaching himself from his window. Rita, I don't have to tell you who this is. He indicates the 65-year-old man. This is Mr. R.M. Lucas, one of our vice presidents. Rita, I'm very honored to meet you, sir. Brackman, Mr. Lucas saw the picture last night. He's very excited about your little scene. Having concluded the introductions, Brackman retires diplomatically into a corner of the office, easing himself out of the way and onto a radiator cover. Mr. Lucas regards Rita blandly out of pale blue eyes. Lucas, you're a very attractive girl. You screen very well. You're a strange type, but you're exciting. Audience response to you has been very interesting. Martin Charles, your director, says you have real talent. We think you're going to be very big. Got a very nice part for you, 6 weeks' work. Your agent will tell you to jump at it. Give Lester his name. We'll send him a script. We'd like to have you under contract, young lady. We'll make very nice terms for you. Why don't you come to my house tonight? We'll discuss the whole matter. A thin smile forms on Lester Brackman's saturnine face. Lucas, I eat at 8 o'clock. I'm sure you'll enjoy the food. Rita looks knowingly at the old man a little warily. Rita, shall I dress or is it informal? Lucas, what does it matter? Mr. Brackman will give you the address. Give my best to your husband, a very fine fellow. Rita, dismissed, smiles, turns, and goes out the door. A moment's pause hangs between the 2 men. Mr. Lucas regards his broad-toed shoes. Mr. Brackman exhales a breath of smoke. After a moment, Mr. Brackman makes a wry face. Brackman, a star is born. Fade out. A street in Bel Air, day. Across a rolling expanse of a house in Bel Air. The house is Spanish Monterey style, surrounded by flowering gardens with a curved driveway leading to and away from the high, heavy oak front door. It is obviously a big house, a rich house, a high-style house. Over this, the following legend. Part 3. Portrait of a Goddess. Rita's home. Several shots show the large entrance foyer, reaching 2 stories up with a wide, curved stairway leading up to the second floor and a huge crystal chandelier dangling from the second floor ceiling. The very large, rather old-fashioned kitchen with wall refrigerators and a Negro man and a woman, middle-aged, working at the preparation of a meal. Long shot, looking out the lanai windows, out across the flat red stones of the patio, the outdoor furniture, across a large expanse of green terrace that slopes down to a white Grecian colonnade and then to the pool. The whole area is surrounded by flower gardens in which an occasional spouting statue stands. Over this, the following legend. Hollywood, California, 1952. Rita's home, back terrace. A man and a woman come out of the den doors onto the patio. They start across the long green terrace toward the pool. The man is tall, gray-haired, casually dressed. The woman is in her late 30s, chic in a casual summer dress and high heels. The couple, whose name is Woolsey, reach the white Greek banister and railing that separate the terrace from the pool. They wave to the lovely blonde young woman sitting on a beach chair at the pool, who now stands to greet them. This is Rita Shawn, 1952, 26 years old, bronzed under the California sun, her hair a gleaming ashen blonde, her body full in the white bathing suit. Behind her, the undisturbed waters of the pool glisten green in the sunlight. Sitting erectly in a white wrought iron chair is her mother, soberly dressed in a simple, formless print dress, bespectacled, reading. The mother is now 48. She has a stern face, austerely pale as if every instinct in her is resisting the sun. Another angle, favoring Rita as the Woolseys come down to the pool. We are aware now of edges of restlessness in Rita. She seems to be in constant small movement, flicking her cigarette, crossing her legs, sitting, standing, moving nervously about. Her eyes shift incessantly to the pool, to the fringe of high palms surrounding the gardens, to the baked red tiles at her feet, to whoever is talking. When she talks, there is an urgency in her words as if she is not sure she is making her meaning clear. We see the vague harrows of troubled nights turning down the corners of her mouth and shadowing her eyes. One gets the feeling of a looseness of flesh, of too full a bosom, of long formless days of drinking and deep gray mornings of despair. She is delighted to be roused from the silence that had hung between herself and her mother. She is on her feet instantly in the furious flurry of introductions. Rita. This is my mother, Mrs. Faulkner. This is Mr. and Mrs. Joel Woolsey, Joe and Sally Woolsey. My mother just came in yesterday. Mrs. Woolsey. Isn't that wonderful? How do you do? The mother smiles and nods, looks up from her book. Rita. My mother read in the paper how I had my nervous breakdown, and she called me long distance. Well, I told you I had that long talk with my mother. It cost $81, that one call. Well, I told you all that about her coming out here. Mrs. Woolsey. How long do you intend staying, Mrs. Faulkner? Rita. Well, she thinks she's just out here for a couple of weeks, but she's really here to stay. Because this is her home from now on. I've been trying to get her out of that little old shack. She lives with my aunt and uncle for years, and now that I got her out here, I ain't gonna let her go. Ma, Mr. Woolsey is the producer of the picture on which I had my breakdown, and they've been at my side all through the experience. They are my oldest and dearest friends. I thought I had a lot of friends, but these two here visited me every day at the sanitarium, and they were the only two, I might add. Except Shirley Donahoe. She's my hairdresser. She's been my hairdresser on every picture since 1949. I wouldn't do a picture without her. But all my other so-called friends, why, they didn't know I was alive. Which just goes to show you something. I don't know what. Why don't you all sit down? Mrs. Woolsey. Well, actually, we just stopped by to see if you would have lunch with us. We're going... Rita. Well, I just think I'll stay here and have lunch with my mother. I haven't seen her in 8 years. 8 years? My heavens, that's no way for a mother and daughter to be. Did I tell you Abe Silverman called an estate yesterday? He just found out I wasn't seeing that psychiatrist anymore. Mrs. Woolsey. Yes, we know. Rita. I said, Abe, I'm not crazy. I don't need any psychiatrist. Why don't you all stay with us for lunch? Mrs. Woolsey. No, Rita. Dear, Rita's starting abruptly for the stairs to the terrace. I'll go tell the cook that... Mrs. Woolsey. Rita, we're having lunch with Arlene Hugo at Frescati's. Rita. Well, I'll go check and see what's holding it up anyways. She hurries in her almost frantic fashion up the stairs in the green, neatly mowed terrace to the house. An uncomfortable pause falls between the Woolseys and the mother. The mother, after a moment. I want to thank you for all you did for my daughter in her time of need. She speaks of your friendship with the deepest affection. Woolsey, seriously. Mrs. Faulkner, we hardly know your daughter. I never met her till she was assigned to my picture 4 months ago. She only met my wife 3 weeks ago. I visited her at the sanitarium because she was holding up my picture for 13 days. Cost me well over $150,000. It makes me very sad to feel she considers us her best friends. I think it's very good that you're out here, Mrs. Faulkner. I think she needs somebody very much. Try to talk her into going back to her psychiatrist. The mother. Well, I'm sure I don't know. Woolsey. You talk to her, Mrs. Faulkner. She needs a psychiatrist. You talk to her. Rita's home, the den, afternoon. Full shot of Rita standing in the den dressed in a casual frock now, smoking a cigarette, giving a directed but not really interested attention to the television set. The GOP political convention is going on. She moves nervously, restlessly around the room, dropping her ashes in various ashtrays. Then she moves in her sandaled feet out into the main entrance foyer and then into the lanai, pausing a moment to look out through the windows across her patio and sloping green terrace. Her cigarette has been smoked down to the filter, and she turns and crushes it out in an ashtray on the lanai table. She promptly lights another one. She rambles over into the butler's pantry, where she smiles briefly at the woman servant, hard at work preparing dinner now. She peeks into the kitchen, which is empty. Rita, to the woman servant. How's everything? The woman smiles. Rita moves with a brief sigh back into the lanai, back into the entrance foyer, and starts up the wide, curved stairway. A Siamese cat slinks silently down the stairs past her. Upstairs landing. Full shot of Rita coming to the top of the carpeted stairway, pausing a moment to look down the length of the corridor to her left. Reverse shot, at the far end of the corridor. We can see into what seems to be a darkened bedroom. Dark, that is, in relation to the brightness of the other rooms. Her mother is sitting, dressed as she was before, in a stiff armchair, reading her Bible. After a moment, Rita moves down the corridor to her mother. The mother's bedroom. Rita. How do you feel, Ma? The mother. Oh, everything's just fine. This is about the biggest house I think I ever saw. Rita. I guess you could put Mrs. Phillips's house on Union Street, which she was so arrogant about, right inside that living room. The mother. I guess you could. Rita. I made inquiries about an Adventist congregation here in Los Angeles, and there is one. I'll drive you down there tomorrow. The mother. Fine, because I do not want to miss Friday night Sabbath. Rita moves into the room, silently gliding to the opposing wall, and sits down on a second soft chair. Rita. You go on with your praying, Ma. I'll just sit here. The mother, who has already turned her attention back to her Bible, her lips moving silently, smiles briefly even as she prays. For a long, long moment, the room is hushed and still between the two women. The older woman by the window, softly murmuring over the scriptures, the younger woman huddled in the far corner soft chair watching her with wide eyes. Rita, suddenly. I make $4,000 a week. Did I ever tell you that, Ma? You know what the studio got for me when they lent me out to Columbia for that Cary Grant picture? $250,000. But they got me on that staff contract, so all I got was my $4,000 a week. Did you see the latest film daily listings? Well, I'm in the top 8 in film daily box office ratings. Do you know the kind of business my last picture, Stardust Girl, did on opening day in New York? We opened at the Roxy in New York, and we did $14,000, and that was a house record for an opening day. We did a boff $158,000 for the week. What do you think of your little girl now? The mother. Well, that's very nice. Rita. What are you reading, Ma? The mother looks briefly at her Bible, then turns to her daughter and recites amiably from memory. And ye shall know that I am the Lord, when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves, and shall put my spirit in you, and ye shall live, and I shall place you in your own land. And shall ye know that I, the Lord, have spoken it, and performed it, saith the Lord. Tears well in Rita's eyes as she stares at her mother. Rita. I'm so glad you came, Ma. Because I was like to go crazy just wandering around this house all by myself. The mother. I meant to come the day I read in the papers about your nervous breakdown, but the doctor. Rita. The words pour out of her. I don't know what's the matter with me. I have these black moods when I'm like to kill myself. I'm really like to kill myself. I had this nervous breakdown. They tell me I began to scream right on the set about this cat. Somebody had brought a cat on the set, and I just began to scream to take it away from me. And I love cats. I got these 2 big Siamese. You've seen them. But my nerves were at the breaking point. I'd been drinking heavily. I confessed to the sin of drinking. Oh my God, I was arrested twice for drunk driving. I just feel, Ma, I'm losing all control of myself. I feel I'm going crazy. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I don't know what I'd done the night before, and I feel I'm going right out of my mind. I can't bear to be alone. I can't bear it. I've taken men home with me who I didn't rightly know for more than an hour because I can't bear to be alone at night. I wake up in the middle of the night in a sweat and my heart pounding. And I've gone down and awakened my servants and made them sit with me till morning. Life just seems unbearable to me. I need you, Ma. I need you to be here with me because I'm like to go insane. I feel like I'm going insane. The mother. We are all put on this earth to suffer. Rita. I'm going to take care of you. Wherever I go, I'm going to take you with me. You will always be at my side. The mother. I spoke to you on the phone last week and I hung up, and I turned to Elliot Wainwright, who was an elder, and to your aunt, who was sitting there, and I said, riches and fame mean nothing, for here is my daughter, the envy of her generation, who liked to cry her heart out over the phone. She is a lost soul, and all the glory of her life is just vanity. King Solomon had all the wealth of the world, and queens of mighty rode miles of sand and desert to see him. And what did he say but, "It is all vanity"? I said, "My daughter is approaching her cataclysm. She has lived a life of sin and torment. She has borne the mark of the beast upon her, and surely she will be redeemed just as all men shall be redeemed from the curse as his corpse molders back to his mother earth." She stands, stares at her daughter, her eyes wide with fervent intensity, but her words are gentle. The mother: "Wipe away the red stains of sin, and clothe yourself in dignity. Your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and you must keep yourself in modesty. Let righteousness into you, honey. Open your soul. Open your arms and just let Jesus Christ in you. Don't hold back a thought, just let him fill your body and your soul, and ye shall be transported into peace and love." Her eyes are closed now as she experiences something of the rapture she describes. O Lord, I yield myself without reservation, and I feel the sweet, sweet warmth and peace." In the corner soft chair, Rita sits bunched, bent almost double, stirred by some physical anguish she has never felt before. Her face is contorted with pain, her eyes clenched shut, her knuckles white as her hands grip each other. "Rita, I feel him near me. I feel him near me." The mother: "Without reservation. You must open your heart and your soul." Rita: "Oh my God, my God." The mother: "Without reservation." Rita: "Oh my God, my God." The mother: "Life is pain and sin and torment, and Jesus Christ absolves you, and there ain't no pain, and there ain't no sin, and there ain't no torment, because your body is filled with his eternal love and his eternal compassion. Just open your arms and let Christ come in to every part of you." Suddenly Rita falls from her contorted position on the soft chair onto the thickly carpeted floor, falling softly on her knees, her back bent in an arch of trembling and supplication. She is sobbing, rather from the extraordinary exhilaration that suffuses her than from some sense of pain. Her eyes are open, brimming with tears, and she stares through the wet film of her tears at the carpet before her. Her mother regards her with deep and gentle compassion. She creeps quietly to her daughter's bent figure and strokes her hair. She kneels down beside her and begins to pray quietly. Rita suddenly clutches at her mother, and the two women hold each other in passionate embrace. Rita's home foyer. A long shot, looking straight at the heavy oaken front door of the house, which opens now to admit Rita with her mother right behind her. Rita seems in the best of spirits. She wears a sober dress and flat-heeled shoes. Her face is devoid of any makeup. She comes hurrying across the entrance hall to the lanai, calling out, "Rita, Joe!" She crosses into the lanai to the screen doors leading out onto the patio. Rita's house patio. Full shot of Rita coming out onto the patio. Joe and Mrs. Woolsey are slouched on the patio furniture. They are reading newspapers and smoking. Woolsey stands as Rita comes out. Rita: "I'm sorry to be so late, but the time just flew." Calling back to the house. "We're out here, Ma." To the Woolseys. "I'll go check dinner. We went for a long ride. I took my mother out to Encino and Sherman Oaks. I showed my mother John E. Towers' home, the father of my first husband. I wonder who's living there now. They got some pretty big ranches out that way. We saw a pretty good-sized herd of cattle." Looking at the screen door. "I guess she went upstairs to wash." Woolsey: "It's nice to see you looking so well, Rita." Rita: "Well, now, Joe, I'm happy. I found God. I truly have. I tell this to you and Sally because I don't think you would mock me. But last Wednesday night, I woke up in the middle of the night with my old panic. Joe, you was at my side when I tried to kill myself on location in Arizona when I had my breakdown. So you know how I was. Well, Wednesday night I woke up and went into my mother and woke her up and woke her and up. We prayed. I prayed to God to save my soul. I held my mother's hand. I remember her fingers tight on mine, and that's what saved me, holding my hand that way. Because I can tell you now just what I feel when I have these nightmares and get drunk like I used to. It's the most awful loneliness in the world. I remember my first husband telling me about this awful loneliness he used to feel. Now I know what he meant. It's like all the world is off somewhere else, like an echo. It must be the loneliness a crying infant feels when it's left all alone. It's just so unbearable. I can't describe it. And I remember holding onto my mother's hand and praying. And I tell you, it went away. I felt so light and relieved from pain and trouble. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat with my mother and we talked and talked. Dawn came up. It was the most beautiful dawn, fiery red like flame. Like God was saying to me, it's all right. Like he personally was saying that to me. And I like to burst, I felt so fine. Oh, Gloria, it's so fine to have my mother with me. There is a radiance to her face now that deeply touches her two friends. Mrs. Woolsey. Well, it's wonderful to see you this way, Rita. Rita, I feel like I'm ready to go back to work, Joe. I'm going to call Abe Silverman and tell him to inform the studio I am ready to read any scripts they care to send me. Dissolve 2. Rita's patio months later. A considerable amount of time has passed, and the mother sits alone on a straight-backed wrought iron garden chair. It is not a rocker, but the mother rocks lightly back and forth as if it were. Her hands are folded in her lap. She is visible in the dark summer night because the lights of the patio are on. Around her, the night is still except for the chirp of crickets. Close up of the mother on the patio rocking back and forth. She is the picture of profound resignation, but her face is troubled. After a moment, she stands disquieted and goes through the lanai screen doors into the dark lanai. Rita's home lanai. The mother comes into the dark lanai, her outline visible because of the patio lights and the lights in the butler's pantry. She pauses a moment, framed against the lanai windows, and then moves into the butler's pantry. The middle-aged black cook is at the sink silently washing some lettuce. The mother stands at the far end of the pantry, watching her tentatively for a moment. The mother. Well, she's just coming home later and later. The cook. Sometimes she don't come home till 11, 12 o'clock at night when she's making a picture. I can set your plate if you're hungry. The mother. No, I'll just wait on my daughter. She looks down at the floor, uncertain and still. The cook goes back to unleafing the lettuce. The mother. Well, maybe I'll just rustle myself up something. Don't you pay no mind to me. I don't feel comfortable having somebody serving me, waiting on me hand and foot. She's at the wall refrigerator, poking her head and looking for some appetizer. I do all my own cooking at home. I cook for my brother and my sister-in-law. I live with them. My brother George is more in bed than out. He is that sick, and my sister-in-law is at the store most of the day. We have a grocery and fruit store. I work there a couple of days, too. I have a very busy day back there in Beacon City. Sometimes I just drop in my bed exhausted at the end of the day. I'll just take some of this here cheese. The cook. You go right ahead and take some of that cheese, ma'am. The mother has found some American cheese. She unfolds a strip from the pack and nibbles at it. The mother, after a moment. I'm so very lonely out here. I'm like to go out of my mind. The cook. Well, it's hard to get to know somebody out here. The mother. My daughter's away all day and most of the night. She's gone at 7 in the morning. I just walk around from one room to another. I just don't know what to do with myself. My daughter and I went down to a church meeting, but the congregation was mostly colored. She bites her lip even as she says the words, mortified with embarrassment. The mother. I didn't mean to say that. The cook, Riley. That's all right, Mrs. Faulkner. An embarrassed silence falls between the two women for a moment. The mother. I got another letter from my sister-in-law. They all miss me very much. She writes how the Schefflers, he's the cashier in the supermarket, and their 2 little boys was over the other night, and they was watching the boys catching fireflies. It's so lovely in Maryland about this time of year in the evening. And the smell of jasmine and honeysuckle is sweet enough to just breathe into your whole body. Oh, I do admit I am homesick. I just ache with it. It's awful hard for a woman of my years to just uproot herself and come live somewhere else. I lived 22 years in Beacon City. The cook. Well, it's hard to leave home no matter how old you are. How old you are. The mother. Yes, it is. There are tears in her eyes, and she turns away sadly and moves back into the dark lanai, nibbling on her cheese. She stands silhouetted against the windows of the lanai, an aging little woman with wet eyes. The mother's room. Across Rita to the bathroom door. Rita still wears a sober dress and no lipstick. She's temper. Her mother is just coming out of the bathroom, wiping her hands on a towel. She is dressed in what would seem to be her one dress, the formless print. Religious pictures and calendars have been pinned on the wall. There is one battered valise open on the bed. Rita, with repressed fury. I ain't gonna pay your railroad fare. If you're thinking I'm going to pay your railroad fare back, you're crazy. I ain't even gonna take you down to the station and buy you tickets. You just find your own way down to the station. I ain't gonna send you no more money. I ain't gonna send you nothing. The mother. Honey, I told you when I first came out here. Rita. All I know is... The mother. I didn't expect I would stay more than 2 or 3 weeks. Rita. I done everything I can to make you happy. The mother. I've been out here more than 2 months now. Rita. I gave a $10,000 tithe for the furthering of missionary work. The mother. Honey, your Uncle George is more in bed than out. He's that sick. And Alice Marie tends the store and they can hardly make do without me. The feeling of some unexpressed hatred suffuses Rita's body in a wave of almost physical heat. Sweat appears in beads on her brow, and her face swells, and the words she says are bitter and unrestrained in their venom. Rita. Viciously. Nothing I do pleases you. Nothing I ever did pleases you. All you know is to run off on me. I hate you so much I can't find the words to tell you how much. You never cared whether I lived or died. Well, just get out of my house. I never want to see you again, not even in your grave. I hope your heart just explodes. I hope you die. I just want you to know that. She turns on her heel and stalks out of the room. The mother stands with her head bowed, the towel hanging slackly from one hand, patiently resigned. Dissolve 2. Rita's bedroom. Full shot of Rita standing by her bedroom window looking out through the white nylon curtains. The sun streams in, whitening her face. Rita's POV. Looking down to the front of the house. There is a yellow cab parked in the driveway in front of the big oaken door. The driver stands waiting for the mother to come out through the door, which is open. When the mother appears in her dark, shapeless topcoat, the driver hurries to help her with her valise. Angle shot. Looking up past the driver as he loads the valise on and as the mother gets into the cab to Rita's window. She is desperately opening one of the casements of her window, pushing the curtains aside. Rita, screaming. There ain't no God. You hear what I said? There ain't no God. The driver nervously gets into his seat of the cab and starts the car quickly. Rita, screaming. There ain't no God. Can you hear me? The taxi curves off down the driveway and wheels into the street and moves out of sight. Rita screams at its departing fumes of unburned oil. Rita, screaming, there ain't no God. Rita turns from the window. She sits down on a bedroom chair, slumped forward, her arms dangling between her knees, her eyes open, staring blankly at the wall ahead of her. She seems entirely spent, weary, exhausted. Suddenly, one of her big Siamese cats swishes silently into the room and moves with feline restlessness around the room. Rita watches it, benumbed. As it moves to rub against her leg, she reaches out and grabs it and presses it against her face. Close-up of Rita's anguished face pressed against the endlessly smooth, pale fur of the terrified cat. Rita, muttering to the cat, there ain't no God. The cat wriggles free and sprints out of the room. Rita remains seated, stumped and exhausted, devoid of any expression. Fade out. Fade in. Beacon City, Maryland, 1957. Very high angle shot showing Beacon City, lolling quietly on its hill on a hot August morning. The sun beats down on the sidewalks, and most of the people are off in the shade of their homes and stores. Most of the people, that is, except for the 70 or 80 that are congregated outside a gray frame house on one of the hills. We may remember this to be the aunt's and uncle's home. There is also a number of cars lined up outside the home. Over this, the following legend. Beacon City, Maryland, 1957. Closer shots show the people outside on the sidewalks, milling sweatily in the street. A shirt-sleeved crowd, but quite respectful. There is no unruliness, just a quiet curiosity. It is apparently a funeral procession that is lined up on the street, for there are a hearse and 2 black limousines and several other private cars. Suddenly there is a murmur and a press of movement in the people hanging around the house, and the pallbearers appear coming out of the front door, bearing a coffin on their shoulders. They move slowly, sweating, down the front path to the hearse outside the house. The crowd is much more with the people following the coffin out of the house. The elder, a spare young man in sober black suit, and then Rita Shawn in a black suit, black hat and veil, and black gloves. She seems faint, being held on one arm by her aunt, now a graying lady also in black, and on the other arm by her secretary, a rather chic woman in her late 40s wearing a blue suit. Full shot of Rita being helped into the limousine by her aunt and the other women. The elder stands by the open door of the limousine watching them. After Rita is deposited in the car, he turns to the woman in the blue suit, who stands wiping the sweat off her brow. The elder. I hope all these people here believe she is grief-stricken. But God knows she came to her mother's funeral drunk as a lord. The secretary. It's no sign of disrespect, elder. She's always a little drunk. She climbs into the limousine. Beacon City streets, day. Various angles of the funeral procession wending its slow way through the town. On the hot sidewalks, a few hardy souls stand and watch. Others look out of windows. Inside the limousine. Group shot of the 4 occupants. Rita and her aunt sit in the rear seat. The elder and the secretary sit on the jump seats. The windows are all open, but the heat inside the car is oppressive. Rita stares through heavy-lidded eyes at the slowly passing storefronts of Main Street. Sweat gathers in beads on everyone's face. They ride stolidly, silently, squinting against the glaring blind spots of the shiny doors and chrome finishings. After a moment, Rita, her voice slightly blurred and without looking away from the passing scene, speaks. Rita, I just suddenly had a picture of myself 25 years ago. A little girl with high ankle shoes and a midi blouse walking down the street here. There are suddenly tears in her eyes, and she stares helplessly around her. Then she lapses back into her vague, lost study of the passing scene. The others ride silently. The aunt wipes her neck. The aunt. My soul, it's hot. They ride slowly on. Cemetery. Long shot showing the funeral procession pulling to a halt outside the iron railing fence of the cemetery. There is a crowd on the walk outside the cemetery, perhaps 150 people. It parts into a respectful path for the transference of the coffin into the cemetery. There are 6 or 7 people already waiting on a small knoll by an open grave. The fresh earth is piled on either side of the grave. The air is humid and dense. The people get out of the cars, form a disorganized line behind the 4 pallbearers, and straggle through the headstones of the small cemetery to join the small group waiting at the grave. Among this group there is a thin, graying man in his late 30s and a girl of 13. We may recognize the man as John Tower, Jr. As the procession comes close to him and the girl, he speaks. Tower. Hello, Emily Ann. Something in the quiet greeting frightens her, and she whirls to the voice. For a moment, she just stares at Tower, and then the shock of recognition floods over her face. Then she brings herself under control. Rita. Hello, John. I hardly expected you here. John, you remember my Aunt Alice Marie? And this is my secretary, Miss Haywood. This is my first husband, Mr. Tower. Will you excuse us, please? They all nod their greetings. The secretary seems particularly hostile. Rita, supported by the 2 women, moves on farther to the grave into which the coffin is now being lowered. There is a moment of silence. Close shot of Rita flanked by her aunt and secretary standing by the grave. All around her are gravestones and crosses. The sun beats down on her. She moves her veil down over her face and then darts a quick look back to Tower and the girl. Rita's POV. Tower and his daughter, a not particularly distinguished-looking girl of 13 among the 15-odd people around the grave. Over this shot, the elder begins his reading from the Bible, quiet and sonorous. Across Rita's shoulder, looking across the elder reading, past Tower and the daughter, past the rows of gravestones, to the 150-odd people staring at her through the iron railings of the fence. Close-up of Rita, rubbing her eyes against the heat. The elder's words droning on behind her. Beside Rita, we see the aunt's bowed head, the ever-present background of gravestones. The heat is beginning to get to Rita. Her eyes close and her head shakes a little. Suddenly, she begins to wail, screaming out into the hot afternoon sky. Rita. I want to die. I want to die. I can't stand it no more. I can't stand it. Leave me alone. I want to die. The secretary moves quickly, slaps Rita sharply. Rita's panic abruptly subsides and her knees buckle. The secretary holds her tightly to prevent her from falling. A murmur rustles through the crowd outside the gate. The elder pauses in his reading. The secretary and the aunt, aided by one of the pallbearers, manage to move Rita away from the grave and back to the entrance of the cemetery. Longshot looking past Tower and the daughter as Rita is being helped away. We can see enough of their faces to see the sad compassion on Towers' face, and the wide-eyed fascination on the daughter's. Aunt's house, porch, dusk. The secretary and the aunt rock quietly on the porch. The secretary has taken off her jacket and unbuttoned her blouse collar. There is still a curious group of about 20 people, mostly teenagers, straggled along the sidewalk across from the house. Long shot of Tower coming up the street to the house, opening the gate and walking up the path to the porch. The aunt. Come on up here in the shade. Tower climbs slowly up to the porch. The aunt. I never expected to see you here. The secretary, with evident coldness. Neither did I. The aunt. It was very nice of you and the girl to come to the funeral. Tower. My daughter wanted very much to come. The secretary, coldly. She's asleep, Mr. Tower. I gave her some pills and she went off. Tower. Do you think she'd like to see us? The secretary. Not after the last time. The daughter. Tower. My daughter would like to meet her very much. The secretary. I don't think I'll let you see her, Mr. Tower. Tower, smoking nervously. I'm not sure just what you have to say about all this, Miss Haywood. Secretary. I've been with Miss Shawn for 3 years. I'm very fond of her. If there's anything that'll stay in my mind till the day I die, it's that picture of you sitting in that lawyer's office 2 years ago, while that hysterical woman pleaded with you on her knees to see her daughter. And you just kept saying, no. Tower. I didn't think it was a good idea for my daughter to spend 2 weeks with a hysterical woman. Secretary. You destroyed that poor girl, Mr. Tower. Tower. She was destroyed long before then. The secretary. Did you know she tried to kill herself that night? Tower. Miss Haywood, this is none of your business. Disapprovingly, he nervously crushes his cigarette out with his foot. It is your job, Miss Haywood, to hover over that poor, desolate woman upstairs. My job is to give my daughter some love of life. I don't really care about Rita Shawn anymore. Or myself. We are a gutted generation born in the Depression and obsessed with prosperity. Well, we got prosperity, and what have we got? A hysterical woman upstairs who needs barbiturates to put her to sleep. Dexedrine spancels to wake her up, and tranquilizers to keep her numb, who has a nervous breakdown once a year and has tried to kill herself at least 4 times that the public knows. I don't want my daughter to grow up like that. Or like me. A twisted, loveless man patched together by psychoanalysis. My daughter was a very strange little girl for a long time. Well on her way to continuing the desolate pattern of her parents, her grandparents, and all the generations before her. The long parade of history that has brought us to this year of suicide and insanity. Do you think I would take this frightened little girl and send her for 2 weeks with a meaningless mother to be devoured by this wandering panther of a woman as she prowls through life looking for some reason for living? My daughter has a reason for living. She's not going to scream out in a hot cemetery that she wants to die. She wants to see her mother very much. She is a sweet girl. She has given me the little importance in life that I have. I thought she might give Rita a little of that. The secretary. You worry about your girl, Mr. Tower. I'll worry about mine. Tower murmurs. So she finally found a mother. Takes out his cigarette pack to light another. I'll come back later. Secretary. You might as well sit here. She'll be up soon. I better go upstairs. She likes me to be in the room when she wakes up. She turns and goes back through the screen door into the house. Tower finds a chair on the porch and sits, loosening his collar. Upstairs bedroom. Close shot of Rita asleep on the bed. The shades are drawn and the room is hushed and quiet. It is the same room she slept in when her mother first brought her to this house 27 years ago. Camera dollies back to show the whole room. An electric fan whirs silently, fluttering the white lace fringes on the bed. Rita sleeping sweetly like a child. Sitting perched on the windowsill is the secretary, quietly studying the lovely blonde girl on the bed in her long, white, childlike nightgown. After a moment, Rita opens her eyes and lies without movement, looking vaguely up at the ceiling. From the small portion of the window not covered by the shade, we can see that it is getting dark outside. The secretary, gently. Hello, baby. Rita turns her head on the pillow and regards her secretary. Rita, let's get out of here. The secretary. We don't have to be back on the coast till Monday. Rita. Let's just get out of this town. I've been sick ever since we got here. The secretary. Okay. We can take the 11 o'clock flight to New York. Your husband, Mr. Tower, is downstairs. Rita. Is the girl with him? The secretary. No. Rita. Okay. Let him come up. What time is it? Secretary. About 7:45. Rita. Give me a drink. The secretary. I want you to eat something first. Rita. Okay. Confirm those reservations. I want to get out of here. I'm feeling nervous again. I feel I'm getting nervous again. The secretary. All right, baby, take it easy. Rita, panic rising in her. We never should have come here. We never should have come here. Secretary, sharply. Rita. The little flurry of panic subsides. The secretary stands, crosses to the old-fashioned chest of drawers, opens her large shoulder bag, takes out a medicine bottle. The secretary, unscrewing cap of bottle. Do you want a pill if you're going to see your husband? She lets a flat capsule fall into her palm. There's a condolence telegram came for you from Joe and Sally Woolsey. Rita. Who are they? Oh, yeah. Whatever happened to them? She suddenly begins to cry. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. She lies on the bed, a handsome blonde woman, childlike, in a long white cotton nightgown, crying quietly. We never should have come here, Horty. It's the same old town. Same old town. You'd have thought it would have changed in 13 years, but just some more cars and a couple of new neons, and the dime store got a new front window, but it's all the same. It's worse even. I always thought this house was a pretty house, but it's a shabby old place. A shabby, shabby little wooden house. Did you see that place where I used to live? Oh my God. It was an ugly, ugly childhood. Ugly and dirty and lonesome. Oh my God. I can feel it now. That lonely little girl with her high ankle shoes. I don't know. Life never changes. I'm the same as I was then, and I'll always be the same. The same miserable little girl wandering through ugly streets in her high-ankle shoes. I wish I could just sleep the rest of my life. She is crying quite fully now. The secretary, who has listened patiently, even compassionately, now brings Rita the tranquilizer pill and a glass of water that was sitting on the chest of drawers. Rita gets up on one elbow, takes the pill. The secretary helps her to drink the water. Rita, the panic momentarily over. You got any sleeping pills there? Secretary. Yeah. Rita. Maybe I ought to take one of those too. The secretary. Okay. The secretary goes to her large bag on the chest of drawers and takes out a larger bottle and starts to unscrew the cap. A quick look of cunning crosses Rita's face. Rita. Why don't you go down and tell my husband to come on up? I'll take the pill after he goes, and then I could sleep on the plane. Secretary, screwing the cap back on and returning the bottle to her bag. Okay. You want a sandwich? Rita, that'll be fine. The secretary goes out of the bedroom, Rita watching her with sly caution. After a moment, Rita gets out of the bed and looks out of the doorway and then moves quickly on her bare feet to her secretary's bag, filches the bottle of sleeping pills, and moves back to her bed, putting the bottle under her pillow. She sits patiently now, dominated by some feeling of immense achievement, deeply calm. She seems unaware of muffled footsteps on the stairs outside. Tower comes a few tentative steps into the room. Tower. Hello, Emmy. She smiles briefly at him, almost as if she didn't know who he was, as if her mind was on other more profoundly moving things. Rita. I was just thinking that life is really a fraud, isn't it? There's really nothing to it at all. I'm 31 years old, and I look back on it all, and all I feel like saying is, so what? I think of all that heartache and fretting. Tower. Slings and arrows. Rita. I got a handsome house with gardens as far as your eye can see, filled with red flowers of paradise and tulips. And I can hardly get out of a taxi cab in New York, but there's hundreds of people crowding around the door, screaming how much they love me. I've known men, hundreds of men, just blank faces. I can't remember them at all. I don't believe there's anything in this world I haven't tried once. All the things that are supposed to be fun really ain't no fun. And all the things that are supposed to be important really ain't nothing at all. Really ain't nothing at all. For the life of me, I can't think of any reason to get up tomorrow morning. I can't think of anything I want or look forward to. It's all a fraud, isn't it, John? Tower. No. She lies back on the bed and looks up at the ceiling, quiet with an almost drunken feeling of omnipotent knowledge. Rita. Why, I remember you, drunk as sin in that dirty little room in the Hotel Montgomery, shouting these very things at me, quoting all the great poets. Tower. All life is weariness, saith the preacher. No man can utter it. Rita. I remember when I was a little girl, I used to dream of drowning all the time. Tower. The dark, tideless floods of nothingness where all who know may drown. Rita. staring up at the ceiling. That seems to me an awful nice feeling, to just float and let the water come up over you. For I can't bear this life no more, I can't. You wouldn't understand. Tower. Sure I would. There is something so gentle in his voice that she looks at him. He is regarding her with great sweetness. Rita. How have you been, John? I never did get to talk to you too much the last time we met. Tower. Oh, still in one piece. Rita. How kind you look. Tower. I was just thinking you're so unchanged. I wish I were meeting you now for the first time. She is suddenly pressing herself against him, her face against his chest. Rita. Hold me, John. He holds her gently. Rita. I never loved anybody but you. Tower, holding her gently. You never loved me either, Emmy. You needed me, but you never loved me. You never knew what love was. Whoever taught it to you? She is crying, and he holds her, caught himself in a surge of emotion. Tower. Life is unbearable if you don't love something, Emmy. Don't I know that as well as you? Come with me now. Put on your clothes and come with me. The girl is waiting at the bottom of the hill. I want you to meet her. People like us can never love anything but our children. But that's something. She's given me moments of great pleasure. Moments when I can see that life is fine. She wants to meet you so much. Rita, face pressed against his cheek. I can't. Tower. That's the reason we came down here, because she wanted to meet you so much. Rita, in panic. I can't face her. She despises me. Tower. Emmy. Rita, flinging herself away from him. Leave me alone. From the open doorway of the bedroom, we hear the secretary's voice. The secretary. Leave her alone. Tower turns to look at the secretary. Rita, in full panic. I'm no good. Tower, to the secretary. Would you rather she clutches at life for half hours in cheap hotel rooms? Rita, sobbing. I had my mother in labor for 17 hours, and I've been nothing but pain to everybody since. The secretary, moving to her. Rita, leave me alone. The secretary to Rita. Give me the bottle. Where'd you put it? Rita, leave me alone. The secretary. Where'd you put the bottle of sleeping pills, Rita? Rita, save me. The secretary slaps her sharply, and the panic subsides as abruptly as it began. Rita stands in the middle of the room, her hair awry, fingering her long white nightgown. Tower regards her with deep, pained compassion. The secretary caresses her hair gently. The secretary, kindly. Where's the bottle, baby? Rita, murmuring. Under the pillow. The secretary leans over the bed and extracts the bottle of sleeping pills from under the pillow. The secretary. Lie down, baby. I have a sandwich for you outside. Rita moves silently like a punished child to the bed and lies down. The secretary sidles over to Tower and looks at him in an oddly pleading way. The secretary to Tower. We got her to a psychiatrist for 4 months, and he said to me we were wasting our money. She's a dead woman, emotionally dead. She could keep coming every day for an hour and pour out her heart, and this would relieve the immediate tensions. But she would never really respond to treatment. I'll take her back to California and she'll go on making movies because that's all she knows to do. And whatever happens after that happens. But I kind of love her, and I'll take good care of her. Tower. All right. He smiles at Rita. I'll see you, Emmy. Rita, smiling from the bed. Please call me if you get out to the coast. Tower. Of course. He turns and goes out onto the landing. Landing outside the bedroom. Tower goes down the stairs. Street outside the aunt's house. Night. Tower comes out of the house. He goes down the walk and out to the sidewalk. He begins to walk quickly down the hill. There is a feeling of pain and urgency and deeply stirred emotions in Tower. Close shot across Tower's shoulders as he reaches for the bottom of the hill where it joins Main Street. There is an ice cream parlor sandwiched between several other stores facing him across the street. Standing in the lighted doorway is his daughter. He stops and stares at the girl, his face almost bursting with the pain of his love for her. Then he comes to her, takes her hand, and leads her briskly farther down Main Street to the little jumble of lights that constitutes the heart of town. Tower. She never had a chance, honey. She never had a chance from the beginning. They go off down the dark hill into the scattering of lights in the heart of the town. Soon they are swallowed up in the darkness. The end.